Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight, specifically the new Midchapter, how it affects my favourite killer, the twins, and what it says about Behaviour's approach to balancing them. The Portrait of a Murder Midchapter notes are here, and there's a lot to talk about, let's put it that way. There's some exceptional stuff in here. The wiggle mechanic being replaced with skill checks is another step towards DBD having better accessibility options. The promise of smaller file sizes and better information for survivors without comms are incredibly exciting. And the retirement of the blackface bubble cosmetic is to be celebrated as the absolutely massive dub it is, alongside the black creators who pushed for its removal. And if you're not sure about the context for that or want to learn more, go check out the video by Sister Karen I'm linking in the description because she covers it far better than I ever could. While there are a lot of good things in this mid-chapter, one thing I think most people agree on is how the balance changes in this patch are pretty underwhelming, to put it lightly. After how much got changed in the last mid-chapter, expectations were high for this one, but the balance changes consist mostly of slightly adjusting killer add-ons, making Dead Man's Switch completely obscene on the strongest killers in the game and mediocre at best on the others, and Boil Over receiving such a massive buff that I'm sure it's gonna get at least 3 maps disabled if it goes to the live game as it is on the PTB right now. And one of the killers getting their add-ons adjusted is the twins, and frankly I'm just puzzled, bemused and defeated. Because when I said twins needed attention, this is pretty much the opposite of what I had in mind. The changes are as follows. Toy Sword is getting nerfed from 0.25 seconds onto pound time to 0.2 seconds. Stale Biscuit's cooldown reduction is going from 0.5 to 0.4 seconds. And Madeline's Scarf speed boost is going from 0.4 meters per second to 0.3 meters per second. It's not all nerfs though. Iridescent Pendant is having its exposed duration buffed again, from 30 seconds to 45. And Baby Teeth's blindness effect duration is being doubled from 15 seconds to 30. What these changes conclusively prove to me is that nobody at Behaviour has ever played twins in their lives, and absolutely refuse to listen to those who do. But before I go into why I believe this to be true, I have something to say. These add-on nerfs are not disastrous, but they are totally unnecessary. 1/20th of a second off Toy Sword is not the end of the world. And while the Speed and Biscuit add-on nerfs are more noticeable, they still won't do a huge amount to how you play or play against the twins. Especially since the Purple Speed add-on Forest Stew is unaffected. But the thing that irritates me about these changes is that I don't know why they happened. Who wanted these changes? What warranted them? The nerfs hit Toy Sword, the twins' most used add-on by a country mile, but not in any significant way. It's still their best add-on and one you're basically mad for not running. It's just a tiny margin less effective, and at that point why nerf it? It's not an overpowered add-on by any stretch of the imagination, and nerfing it just because people use it seems really backwards. Don't you want people to use your add-ons? It just makes no sense. It was their best add-on but nothing insane before, it's their best add-on with nothing insane after. It's a nerf that does almost nothing, but everyone's going to experience it, because everyone's still going to run Toy Sword, making everyone's twins experience a tiny bit worse for no real reason. But the green add-ons are where things start to get really stupid, because even if Toy Sword being their best add-on is reason enough for it to get nerfed, the nerfs to Madeline's Scarf and Stale Biscuit make even less sense. The first thing I noticed is that despite the green speed add-on getting nerfed, the purple speed add-on has remained untouched, which is, strange. If green speed is too strong and needs to get nerfed, why is purple speed, which is just a straight up improvement on the green speed add-on, fine remaining as it is? And the only answer I can think here is that Madeline's Scarf is used more than Forest Stew despite being a weaker add-on, and there's good reason for that. The twins' worst add-ons are at the yellow and green rarities, to the point that Madeline's Scarf is their only good green add-on. The rest range from having a tiny impact on the game to being outright detrimental. So whenever the game tries to generate a green twins add-on in a Bloodweb slot, Madeline's Scarf is the only one you actually want to have. You'll take a Stale Biscuit or a Weighty Rattle if you have to, but if you see a Madeline's Scarf in your Bloodweb, you take it and you don't think twice. By this process, you'll likely end up with a lot more Madeline's Scarf than you would of any other green add-on, and I'll be using them a fair amount. Forest Stew, however, is both a rarer add-on being purple, and has some competition in its own rarity. Spinning Top is an incredibly good add-on in our current medkit meta, to the point I'd argue it's better than both speed add-ons. And Victor Soldier and Drop of Perfume both have their places in niche but fun builds. So every time you see a purple add-on generating your twin's blood web, chances are you want it to some degree. This will naturally dilute the number of forest stews you have compared to your other add-ons, meaning that when you're going to play twins, you'll have a ton of Madeline Scarves and relatively few forest stews. Madeline Scarf having a high usage rate compared to the strictly better forest stew is because twins have too many bad green add-ons that make Madeline Scarf the only one worth buying in a blood web. So Madeline Scarf got nerfed not because it was overpowered, but because twins' other add-ons sucked too much to be worth buying. It's the most arse-backwards reason for a nerf in human history, and it's frankly peak behaviour. Wait, hang on, no, it's the second most arse-backwards reason for a nerf, because I forgot what they did to Stale Biscuit. They shaved 1/10 of a second off Stale Biscuit's recovery time, which is a nerf as minute as it is pointless. I strongly believe Stale Biscuit is the weakest add-on Behaviour has ever nerfed, and that's saying something given that they nerfed Burning Candle, Hellshire Iron, and Trickster's Night Capacity add-ons. When twins had their release hit fatigue time of 3 seconds instead of 5 seconds, Stale Biscuit was actually halfway solid, since it took your post-hit fatigue down to 2.5 seconds, meaning it was kinda difficult for the survivors to kick you after a down unless they were tightly stacked up. But after the all-kill mid-chapter nerf that they received which took Victor's post-hit cooldown to 5 seconds, Stale Biscuit's primary utility as a sort of save the best for last substitute for Victor dropped through the floor. Reducing a 3 second fatigue to 2.5 seconds was way more impactful than dropping a 5 second fatigue to 4.5 seconds, to the point that the add-on is now actually pretty bad. It only really does anything for you if you miss a lot of your pounces, which if you're decent at twins you shouldn't be doing very much. However, it's recently seen a small resurgence after Dead Hard validation arrived, and survivors started to eat your pounce momentum by dead harding late. For those who aren't aware, dead hard removing the survivor's hitbox during the invincibility frames normally means a pounce from Victor will fly straight through the survivor and he'll land on the other side of them, often giving him enough distance to recover from his cooldown and swing again. But if the dead hard gets validated, you'll just bounce off the survivor instead of flying through them and won't gain that distance, meaning the survivor will get a kick almost guaranteed. Stale Biscuit's recovery time might be the only thing you can do to counter that and allow yourself to recover before you can be kicked. So the Biscuit getting nerfed instead of dead hard getting fixed just feels like another, kick in the teeth. But honestly, I have an even more cynical take as to why Stale Biscuit of all twins add-ons got nerfed. Because the amount of time that you have to kick Victor depends on the post-pounce fatigue time. If you haven't fully kicked Victor by the end of the fatigue, your animation will cancel and Victor will regain control. I'm willing to bet the reason Stale Biscuit got nerfed was because someone at Behaviour had that happen to them. Had their kit cancelled because of Stale Biscuit and got so mad about it they nerfed the add-on. Wouldn't be the first time. It sounds like I'm being super rude here, but I legitimately cannot think of any other reason to nerf it, because the add-on hasn't even been close to good since about April last year. So in summary, the nerfs are perplexing and make zero sense. But what about the buffs? Well, the buffs basically don't exist, because for the buffed add-on to actually have an impact on matches would require people to run it. And despite the buffs, no one's going to run these add-ons anyway, just like no one ran them before. Irritation is basically only good when dealing with snowmen or when you're playing a fishing twins build alongside Victor's soldier, which nobody ever did, and the add-on's exposed duration being buffed won't suddenly make that build good enough to be used for anything other than a meme. But the funniest buff to me, by far, is Baby Teeth, because it's the perfect display to show us that Behaviour does not play their own game, or at least doesn't play twins. Because the problem with Baby Teeth isn't the blindness's duration, it's the conditions required to get the blindness in the first place. Look, I like blindness as an effect more than most people do, and it's actually not the worst thing to give to a killer as slug heavy as twins. But not even I would run Baby Teeth, because the blindness effect only triggers when a survivor manually removes Victor. If he's recalled with the manual recall action, if he downs someone or if Charlotte downs someone with Victor attached to them, the blindness won't trigger. And survivors almost never choose to remove Victor of their own accord, so the add-on most of the time will never even apply. Buffing the duration of an event that will never happen is totally pointless. It's why Waiting Rattle, Rusted Needle, and Baby Teeth all suck, but Spinning Top is actually very good, because the first three all apply to removing Victor, and the last one applies to any Victor hit. And even if the blindness did apply to every Victor hit and not just on removal, the add-on would still not be worth running. because of a buff that happened in the last Midchapter update 3 months ago. Third Seal now allows power attacks like Victor to apply permanent blindness until the hex is broken. So if you really wanted to run blindness on twins, you just use Third Seal now. Why would you run an add-on that gives temporary blindness when you could just run a perk that gives near permanent blindness on all Charlotte or Victor hits? Buffing Baby Teeth on its own would be questionably effective, but when you take the Third Seal buff into account, it just makes you want to hide in a quiet room for a very long time. The buffs mean nothing because these add-ons will never get used despite those buffs, because the buffs don't solve what makes the add-ons bad, how situationally their effects matter. In terms of the end experience for players, the only thing that we're going to be noticing is the nerfs, because the nerf stuff is still by far the best we've got, so that's still all we're going to use. And the buff stuff is still so bad, it's basically never worth using, so we'll never feel the effect of those buffs. A buff is pointless if it doesn't affect anyone, and a nerf to something that everyone uses is going to hurt everyone, even if the nerf isn't enough to stop them from using it. And I'll be real with you, twins don't need nerfs at all, especially in this current meta. Circle of Healing destroys them so badly, because they can stop you snowballing with Victor incredibly easily. And it's become common enough now in survivor builds, when you're measuring a killer's strength, how effective they are against Circle of Healing is something that you have to take into account. In a world where survivors can regenerate health at the drop of a hat, and completely negate your pressure, I don't think twins can reasonably be called a strong killer anymore. The meta has shifted so hard against them, that something big needs to be done to put them back into favour. Whether that's a hit to healing and recovery perks across the board, or direct buffs to the twins to allow them to compete with survivors getting so much free time efficiency, I advocate a little bit of both. Sure, without those things in play, twins get a lot stronger. But when was the last time you saw a game where nobody had Circle of Healing? Nobody had Unbreakable or Dead Hard or We Can Live Forever or Medkits. Those miracle games where the pressure you build is allowed to maintain itself are getting less and less frequent, as the meta consolidates around healing and twins are left in the dust. And that's not even taking into account the more niche but still noteworthy scenarios where a perk or perk combo can make survivors literally invulnerable against twins specifically. The two standouts being Exponential and Flip-Flop Power Struggle combo. As I demonstrated before, survivors can run into an exponential boon location after being hit, and most of the time can pick themselves up faster than the twins player can, because the time it takes for the killer to sit through 8 seconds of recovery animations and then trudge over for the pickup is slower than the 15 seconds of recovery time. Or if the survivor you down has the combination of Flip-Flop and Power Struggle and goes down under a pallet, you physically can't pick them up, even if you're right on top of them, because the 8-second fatigue time is enough for them to get halfway recovered, meaning their 50% recovery progress converts to 25% wiggle progress with Flip-Flop. Because that's the threshold for Power Struggle, they will stun you and pallet save themselves without anything you could ever have done to stop it, because by the time you're physically capable of moving to pick the survivor up, they've already recovered enough to hit you with Power Struggle. It's clear that DBD's recovery and healing are not balanced around twins, and vice versa, and instead of fixing the interactions between them by reducing the twins' downtime through fatigue so they can pick you up in time, they're buffing Power Struggle's wiggle threshold, so this will be happening more consistently. Lucky us. It'd be fair to say that not a toy sword especially would be the straw that broke the camel's back, but the camel's back has been shattered a long time ago, and they just keep piling straws on, hoping that will solve the problem, instead of just making it worse. But you know what, Behaviour like their stats, right? So I lined up a couple that might find interesting. A group of friends on Reddit decided to keep track of each killer they played against for 1,000 games they played in November 2021, and for 2,000 survivor games in December of the same year. And you wouldn't believe what killer was the least played in both months. Out of every 1,000 games in November, they ran into the twins only 15 times. And in the 2,000 games in December, they only ran into 25. And given how much these guys play, they're likely to be at the higher end of the MMR spectrum, where you'd expect to see more twins, because they're not the kind of killer that new players will pick up easily. And Behaviour are about to nerf them again, both directly through the add-on changes and indirectly by buffing Power Struggle. I have no words. In October 2021, the developer showed us a kill rate stats page for each killer, with twins coming in just below 53.5% average kill rate. So they were a little on the low side, but just a little. Although it is worth remembering, these stats are from July to September 2021, before Circle of Healing, then had validation and exponential arrived. 3 things that individually hurt the twins harder than almost any other killer in the game. Do we think those 3 things existing drop the twins' kill rates by, say, 2%? To put that in perspective, a 2% drop in kill rate would mean 1 survivor would escape for every 50 that would otherwise have died, or 1 survivor in every 12 or 13 matches. Assuming that 1/50th or 2% difference in kill rate is approximately correct, that would put the twins' kill rate at 51%, which would put them in the bottom 5 killers by kill rate, down there with aggressively weak killers like Trickster and Clown, and unintuitive killers with a steep learning curve like Plague and Nurse. And it's worth remembering that during the data update before that in the October 2020, they also released corresponding pick rate stats to show us which killers are popular and which killers were unpopular. Interestingly, they didn't show us that in 2021 though. Meaning we have no concrete stats to incontrovertibly prove that twins have the lowest pick rate in the game, even though we all know they do. Weird that Behaviour loves their stats, and yet won't give us this one when they gave it very willingly before. Back on topic. If that estimate of 1 extra escape every 12 or 13 matches is a conservative one, and the real figure is more than that, their kill rate might be even lower. And given how much Behaviour loves to balance around numbers and kill rates, you'd think that would be a cause for alarm. But no, they can take the killer with a subpar at best kill rate, and I'm gonna bet the lowest pick rate in the game, and do nothing to fix them, except nerf their best add-ons with no significant compensation. That's idiotic on the face of it, and only gets worse the more you think about it. So why is this happening? I fundamentally do not think the balance and design teams at Behaviour understand their own killer. I say this not out of disdain, but because I wish to offer the benefit of the doubt. I'd like to think they merely don't understand the damage that they're dealing. Because the alternative is that they do, and they just don't care, or worse, actively seek to minimise the number of people who want to play twins. So what would I change instead? 1. Revert the post-hit fatigue nerf. A 5-second post-hit fatigue is borderline criminal, and 3 seconds is already the longest attack fatigue in the game. It's something that I've been harping on about for ages, but for good reason. It just makes them feel like shit. 2. Change the way their cooldowns work, especially with regards to Charlotte. I don't think you ever have to have a fatigue for choosing to switch to Charlotte, ever. Playing Dollmaster in VHS helped me to realise this, because I understood there's a much better way to fix the twins' fatigue problem than what we currently have. When Dollmaster hits someone with a doll, he can use the dismiss action to return control to the Dollmaster at any time he wishes, even during the doll's post-hit attack cooldown. But whenever he switches back by dismissing a doll, he's unable to switch to another doll for 6 seconds, despite having full control over his body. This is how switching to twins should work. Instead of having an animation that you sit through of waking up or anything, control should be returned instantly at any time during the fatigue to make switching as smooth as possible. But to prevent situations where you're just switching back and forth from twins forever, there should be a short cooldown between switching, maybe 5 seconds, where you can control a character as normal and the only thing that you can't do is switch. Killers will enjoy it more because you won't be stuck in the animation locks, and survivors will enjoy it more because twins are now incentivized to switch to Charlotte to pick them up. And if Victor switches back to Charlotte, that's a free 5-second window for a teammate to run in and kick Victor immediately, without risking Charlotte switching back and turning the tables on them. Imagine seeing Victor switch to Charlotte for 5 seconds, know for a fact you can get a kick off on him, guaranteed with no risk of being switched back on. That would make playing against twins without comms much easier. It would be such an elegant solution to decrease the time between the killer downing the survivor and picking them up, which right now is the twins' biggest issue by a mile. It would reduce the effectiveness of anti-slugging perks against them by just making them less slug reliant, which is good news for everyone. Number 3. Fix Victor camping hooks, and improve how he interacts with the map in general. I'm taking more inspiration here from Dollmaster. He also has restrictions on where he can place his dolls. Just like twins can't place one of them too close to a hooked survivor, or whatever else, Dollmaster can't place a doll too close to another doll. But when Dollmaster tries to place a doll too close to another one, the other doll just moves a bit. Instead of rejecting your input until you meet the game's abstract demands, you just move until the commands are met. I think a similar system could and should be adopted for twins. I said before that Victor should self-destruct and return to Charlotte if the survivor is hooked on top of him, while he's idle, and I stand by that. But furthermore, I think using the switch command when Victor is somewhere he shouldn't be, like under a hook for example, the switch should return Victor to Charlotte and immediately put you back to controlling her, putting Victor on cooldown. Hell, it might reduce Victor camping still further, because now you're not shuffling Victor back away from the hook, the absolute minimum distance to allow yourself to switch. But yeah, these changes aren't the death of twins, they're not some unmitigated disaster. What worries me a lot more is the idea that Behaviour is going to see these and say to themselves, yeah, we've sorted twins out now, and then leave them to rot for another year, pausing only to give them new bugs that never get fixed, and drop an anvil on their head with a new feature that hard counters them every single update, like the last few months that we've had. Twins were never the most popular killer, and how they've been treated by the balance and design teams over the past year has only reduced the number of people willing to play them. How long is it going to be before even dedicated twins enjoyers like Lynxie or I stop and move on to greener pastures? The answer to that is simple. How much longer are Behaviour going to ignore the elephant in the room instead of doing what they should have done as soon as they came out and finish making their goddamn killer?